What's up, beautiful people? Happy Thursday. Long time no see. Big break from baseball this week. Obviously, the All-Star game where the National League got screwed again, almost like every year. I feel like we never win the All-Star game. But some good news, baseball's back tomorrow, or bad news, depending how you look at it. The way the Padres have been playing has been very interesting. But in this video, we're going to look at some potential trade targets, some options out there that are in baseball, some people on some really crappy teams, some people that are on some okay teams that might not sell. I just don't see the Padres selling unless they absolutely have the worst second half of July that you can possibly imagine. Preller kind of already on the hot seat. I don't see the Padres selling, so I do predict them buying, and hopefully we can string some good wins together and look at some possible guys that could get us past that little mark in the NL wildcard race. Right now, there's a lot of teams that are really in the same boat. Obviously, the Padres are one of them. We're going to look at who's available, who's cheap, who's expensive, the needs and wants that we have, and so 3 specific dudes that I really want to dive into, look at a lot more that I think could really help us. So let's go ahead and dive into the video. Let's do this. I know I've said it for 20 plus years, but I got a feeling this is the year. God, Tatis is such a sexy guy. Keep the faith, baby.
1 year soon, the baseball gods will smile on the San Diego Padres, and we will have a parade.
Stay vibrant, Friar Faithful.
And now your handsome host, Beto Diaz on Friar Field Talk.
So jumping right back into it, let's go ahead and look at some of the trade options that I think could be a really big bonus for our team. Obviously, this team needs to trade. I do not see us selling at the deadline unless we have just a miserable July. Like I'd said, I don't expect it with Preller on the hot seat. I don't expect the Padres to sell. So this whole video is going to focus on additions to the team. Hopefully we're buyers. Obviously right now we're right after the All-Star break, so the next 2 weeks are going to be vital. But let's go ahead and jump into who I really think could be really good for our boys. The first guy I really want to talk about is Erick Fedde. Erick Fedde is a starting pitcher right now for the Chicago White Sox. One of the few bright spots the White Sox do have. Fedde is 31 years old. Drop my towel. He's spotting a 7-3 record with a 2.99 ERA and a 1.13 WHIP. Some really significantly good numbers there. He's pitched 111 innings, also very good for a starter, and has 99 strikeouts. Fedde is a guy that used to be in Washington that could never really figure out his identity, had some really bad problems with control. His K rate wasn't that great, but this year has seen a significant uptake in all of those numbers. One of the rarest bright spots of the Chicago White Sox, one of a couple that we're going to talk about in this video. His last 5 games, he's pitched pretty good. He's making $7.5 million a year this year. He's under contract again until next year, also making $7.5 million. So might be a little bit expensive for our salary. But to get him, I don't expect to give up too much for Erick Fedde. Obviously, he's under control this year and next year. But I know there's going to be a lot of potential suitors out there. A lot of teams similar to us, obviously, in the wild card race. But I do expect us to try and make a push for Erick Fedde, and maybe, I don't know, offer a couple of high-end prospects. I don't expect him to be costing too much besides his $7.5 million contract. The next guy I really wanted to pinpoint and talk about was Yusei Kikuchi. Kikuchi obviously has been in the majors for a while now, still with the Blue Jays here. He has a 4-8 record with a 4.42 ERA, having a 1.302 WHIP. That's through 106 innings, also very good for a starting pitcher. He has 117 strikeouts. His K rate has upped significantly, has to do with his spite on his slider. Kikuchi always used to have problems with his velocity, but this year he's seen a major uptake. He's sitting 96, 95 on his fastball. Pretty good for a left-handed pitcher. And that nasty sinker that you just saw right there, fooling Juan Soto right there on that slider inside. Kikuchi's another guy that's been around for a long time. He's 33 years old. He will be a free agent next year. Only problem with Kikuchi this year for 2024, he is making $10 million. So that's definitely going to add to the salary. But I do suspect the Blue Jays to sell. They've had a really abysmal year. A lot of guys could not come through for them when they needed. So I do expect the Blue Jays to sell, and I think Kikuchi should be a guy that we ring the phone for the Blue Jays to try and help us out. Also adds that left-handed arm that we desperately need to our starting pitching rotation. The next guy I really want to talk about, and focusing now here a little bit on the bullpen, is Tanner Scott. Tanner Scott is currently the closer for the Marlins, has looked really electric. Left-handed pitcher for the Marlins. has shown some really good stuff. He's 29 years old, 6-5 record with a 1.34 ERA. He has a 1.06 WHIP, a really good sweeper. He's has 45 Ks over 40 and a third innings. He is making $5.7 million this year, so a pretty cheap option for someone that could really step up in the bullpen. Obviously, our bullpen has been hurting us multiple times. You can probably think of 5, maybe even 10 games that the bullpen is fucked up for us. So this would be a major, major add. He will be traded. It's just a matter of who's going to get him, because the Marlins are horrible. They're going to offload anybody that they can for some sort of prospects, and I don't expect the asking price to be too high just because he is a free agent next year. He's a complete rental, but he's pitched very, very well. I do expect he will be traded, and I hope the Padres put their nose and their name in it. I know the Mets had shown interest, the Phillies had shown interest. This is a guy that you want on your team. His pitch really, really fantastic, and also addition to that left-handed arm. Obviously, Matsui in the bullpen, lefty. Not too many lefties with Morejon. He would be a really, really stellar option for our boys. And now on to another really, really stellar big name. Probably the biggest name on the going to be at the trade deadline, Garrett Crochet. Crochet is a lefty for the White Sox. He has been absolutely lights out. He's sitting at a 6-6 record with a 3.02 ERA, with a .95 WHIP, over 107 innings and 150 Ks. It's hard to beat for this guy. His contract is low. He's on a rookie contract still, $800,000. He has arbitration next year, and he's a free agent in 2027. Obviously, Crochet has shown some really good stuff. Obviously, the biggest piece on the market right now. However, his price is going to be high. I really hope that Preller doesn't try and say Salas or DeVrij. I feel like those are two guys that I just can't be happy trading. Obviously, he's going to be the major ask and want for any team, especially for a guy with Crochet that's under contract and dominant. However, with Crochet, a lot of people don't realize he's kind of going to be at an innings limit. So far, he's already pitched 107 innings, the most he's pitched at this point in his entire career, and he has had some injury problems in the past. I do expect his innings limit he's going to reach an innings limit, and he's going to get capped. So I don't expect him to be going into the 7th inning and the 8th inning in must-win games, which is what we would need him for. Obviously, an amazing, amazing starting pitcher that will really, really help any team, especially ours, with a high fastball velocity and a wicked, wicked slider. Crochet is the biggest name on the market, but I just don't think the Padres have enough to get him. And if they do get him, they're going to give up a lot. So I'm iffy about getting Crochet myself. He would obviously help us a lot, and he's been dynamite. I just think he's too expensive and just not worth it at the moment. The next guy I want to talk about is Jack Flaherty of the Tigers. Starting pitcher, obviously we remember him back in his days in St. Louis. Flaherty's 28 years old. He has a 6-5 record with a 3.13 ERA and a .979 WHIP. That is fucking stellar. Flaherty has looked really well for the Tigers this year. Obviously, the Tigers are one of those teams that have a lot of really good young kids, but they're just not anywhere close to being able to contend right now. So I do expect the Tigers to sell. He's been doing this over 95 innings with 119 Ks. His last 5 games, he's been pretty good, anywhere sitting around 5 innings, 6 innings per game. He's currently also a little bit expensive, $14 million a year contract right now, but he will be a free agent next year. So I do think the Tigers are going to float his name around a little bit. I think he will He will try and get a lot of money when he's signing next year. But I think right now, a piece that the Tigers may be willing to sell, and a piece that I think we should look into if he does become available. I know the Tigers have been sitting just a little bit under 500, sometimes back to 500. So I do see Flaherty being on the market, and I hope our boys can at least put their name in it and try and get a really good, solid right-handed pitcher. The next guy I wanted to highlight is Tyler Anderson, lefty starting pitcher for the Angels. He's been around forever. He's been with Colorado. He's been with Pittsburgh. He's with the Dodgers. Now he's with the Angels, but he's been having a really, really good year. He has an 8-8 record with a 2.97 ERA and a 1.16 WHIP. He's done that over consecutive innings. His last 5 games, he's been pretty dominant. A little bit expensive again with Tyler Anderson. He is having a $13 million a year contract this year. He's signed until again next year, where he makes another $13 million. He's a free agent in 2026. So price may be a little bit steeper. Obviously, the Angels, like every fucking year, are going to be sellers. looked horrible this year for the Angels have, but Tyler Anderson has been a big bright spot for them. Another left-handed pitcher there on the market. Only a handful of options out there on the market, you guys, but Tyler Anderson is one of them, and I do hope the Padres can mix their name in. A guy that's going to give you a lot of innings. He's not going to get you a lot of strikeouts, but he's going to throw the ball. He's going to throw 200 innings, maybe even more. He's very consistent, and he's had a really, really stellar year so far. So I hope the Padres can at least ask him and see if his name's available, and maybe add him to our club. That would really solidify at least a 3-man solid rotation that we have. The next guy I want to talk about is another familiar face, Cal Quantrill. We did give him away, and he kind of fished around with Cleveland, had shown some stuff, but really deteriorated, ended up getting picked up by the Rockies, and has been having a pretty decent year. His last few games have been a little bit iffy, but he's spotting a 6-7 record with a 4.13 ERA and a 1.34 WHIP. He's spotting 78 Ks on the year. He's making $6.5 million this year, so not too expensive. He is available for arbitration in 2025, and he becomes a free agent in 2026. So essentially, he's under contract for this year and possibly next year, but most likely will. The Padres always seem to match arbitration cases almost every single time. They give the pitcher or the batter what they want. Quantrill, another familiar name. Obviously, that sinker is his main pitch. Changeup also really good. Has shown some decent stuff in Colorado, which is kind of crazy because that fucking sandbox piece of shit stadium in Colorado, if you could probably hit a home run off of it in there. Anyways, Quantrill, a name to be out there and probably thinking about. I'm not sure how the Rockies do about trading within the division. I don't really ever remember a time where they really did that. But a name that we got to keep our eyes on and possibly see if we can try and get a trade together for him. I don't expect his price to be too much, so definitely a name we should look into and see if he's available. Back with the big guns in the bullpen, this time probably the most expensive and best relief pitcher right now on the market, Mason Miller. You all know him well. Jackson Merrill hit that home run walk-off against him, but he is fucking elite. He's spotting a 1-1 record with a 2.27 ERA and a .857 WHIP. His WHIP is under 1, you guys. He's driving 70 Ks, and he's still on that rookie contract. He's making $740,000. He has an arbitration coming up in 2026, and then will become a free agent in 2027. Not much to say about Mason Miller because of how dominant and well he is. I'm sure you all know. Spots 102-mile-per-hour fastball, a disgusting slider and sinker on the outside part of the plates. Mason Miller is a name that's going to demand a lot. And even for a relief pitcher, typically relief pitchers don't have much of a haul, but I feel like Mason Miller is one of those guys that he's going to take a lot to get. A guy that, if available, which I think he is because he's with Oakland, Oakland's not going anywhere. They're trying to sell as much people as they can. A guy that you really can go out there and try and get. I would be able to offer maybe one high-end prospect for him, not named Salas or DeVrij. Maybe a Snelling. Snelling's really regressed this year. Maybe a Lesko. I do feel like you want to hold on to Lesko because he's one of our only big starting pitcher names out there with Snelling. But if the price is right, maybe one of them, I would trade for Mason Miller just because he's so dominant. We'd have a dominant force in the bullpen with Suarez and him and Estrada, with a Monajuan piggybacking 6th and 7th on opposite days. Would really, really solidify the bullpen and would be a significant piece for us. Back to another bullpen piece. The next guy I want to talk about is Carlos Esteves. Esteves is another familiar face back in his time with Colorado. He's having a really good year this year with the Angels. 1-3 record. Oh, look at him doing the Rasengan there, or the Kamehameha. Not sure which one it was, Dragon Ball or Naruto. Probably Dragon Ball, a little bit more popular. But back to his numbers. 1-3 record, 2.61 ERA with a .77 WHIP. A stellar stat line right there. Under contract again this year for $6.7 million. Obviously a little bit expensive there with his contract, and he is a free agent next year. Another guy on the Angels. I do expect them to trade. Definitely a name that could also solidify the bullpen. Not as expensive you would look at as Mason Miller, but probably would demand maybe one or two guys. Probably not one of the high prospects just because he's a relief pitcher, but a name that we should really, really put our pick in the hat and try and get him. This guy would really solidify our bullpen, stick him in the 8th or the 7th inning, and have some really good leverage there in the bullpen. Another Chicago White Sox, possibility is another relief pitcher in Michael Kopech. Kopech was really famous this year because he threw an immaculate inning, 9 pitches, all of them strikes, struck them all out. Kopech is having a pretty good year. His numbers may fool you a little bit because they started him off as a starting pitcher and he just didn't figure it out. But since his move to the bullpen, he's been terrific and lights out. He has a 2-8 record, 5.05 ERA, and a 1.39 whip. So the numbers don't really jump out at you, but he's had some really good demanding shit. Could be a really, really good 7th or 8th inning guy, I feel like. Has really found his stuff in the bullpen. Obviously, right here, this immaculate inning when he gets the save is in the 9th to close out the game against the Twins. This was just recently. He's sitting at $3 million this year and has an arbitration case in 2025, and he would become an unrestricted free agent in 2026. Don't think the asking price would be too high for Michael Kopech. I do think he's a name that we could possibly try and go out and get. Wouldn't demand too much. The White Sox are going to try and sell anyone with a fucking pulse that has any ability to play baseball. So I do think we should put our name in the hat for Michael Kopech. So looked really, really good in the bullpen and really would solidify some bullpen help that we desperately, desperately need. Back to another familiar bullpen piece, good old Kirby Yates. We all remember Kirby Yates used to be the closer for our boys. Kirby has really found his stuff again this year, has looked really dynamite as a closer for the Rangers. The Rangers are a really interesting team that I do believe are going to be sellers. Obviously, I think they're like 8 or 9 games under 500. I just don't see them having enough this year with all the injuries they've had and the old heads in their rotation. I do expect the Rangers to sell, and if they did, I think Kirby Yates would be a fantastic, fantastic choice to add and solidify our bullpen. Some numbers for Kirby Yates. He's sitting at a 3-1 record with a 1.05 ERA and a .903 whip. Another guy with a whip under 1. Just spectacular. He's extremely cheap. His contract this year is running for $1.2 million, and he's a free agent next year, so he would be, again, a rental. But $1.2 million, if the Rangers do decide to sell, Kirby Yates would be a fantastic add to the bullpen with that really dynamite movement on his two-seam and changeup and sinker that we all remember. Would be a really, really good piece for our bullpen if the Rangers do decide to sell. Sticking to the Texas Rangers, this time with Michael Lorenzen, the starting pitcher. He's looked really, really good as well. Also, obviously, a guy last year with Cincinnati. He did have the no-hitter, a name that kind of floats out there as an average pitcher that has above average stuff. Obviously, right now, my outlook on this team is we don't need the star big guy. We need the guys to fill the rotation that are going to go 6 innings and allow 2 or 3 runs. That's the shit I want, and Lorenzen fits this mold just perfectly. Lorenzen sitting on a 5-5 record with a 3.52 ERA and a 1.21 whip. Some pretty solid numbers for a starting pitcher, especially with Texas that's really struggled this year. He has one last year on his contract this year at $4.5 million, and he'll become a free agent again next year. But pretty cheap option if the Rangers do decide to sell, like I said about Kirby Yates, a name that we definitely should put our name in the hat for. He's looked pretty good for Atlanta, for Texas, and would definitely be a stellar piece to fit that 3rd or 4th spot rotation for our boys. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and stay in big old Texas, baby. This time we're looking at Nathan Eovaldi. Eovaldi spotting a 6-3 record with a 2.97 ERA and a 1.043 whip. Stellar numbers there in that whip and ERA. Thing about Eovaldi, he's going to be expensive if the Rangers do decide to sell. He's sitting also this year, his contract runs for $16 million, and he has to make $20 million next year in 2025, then becomes a free agent in 26. The thing about Eovaldi, though, his name is a little bit bigger than all the other people that I talked about, besides maybe Crochet. A known guy for very, very clutch and in-the-moment dude. Practically helped the Rangers win the World Series last year. Has shown some really, really electric shit. Going to be very expensive to get in return, but if we were able to maybe give up one of our major prospects, not named Salas or DeVrij, I would not be upset if we gave up both Lisco and maybe Snelling for him. But this guy has shown some really dominant shit. Only problem that you can see right here in this video as well is he has had some sort of injury bugs this year, has had some problems with his lat, his shoulder, his legs. So a little bit of worrisome there, which will help his trade value. A lot of teams will be asking in on him and asking also, the first question will be, is he available? And the second question is going to be, is he healthy? So with that on the table, I know we've had some injuries, obviously, with Musgrove, with Darvish, with all the injuries that we've had for our starting pitchers. I know maybe adding another guy that's not exactly healthy isn't the greatest idea, but with the dominant shit that he has, I think he's worth the gamble, and I do think I would be able to give up a top prospect for him if the Rangers do decide to sell. The last pitcher we're going to look about is Kyle Finnegan. Finnegan is the closer for the Washington Nationals. Another Nationals team that I do feel will probably be sellers. They have stuck around 500, and they have shown some pretty good signs with Abrams and Gore and all the people that we know of. Obviously, we had that really good series against them where we swept them to put a fire under our ass. But Finnegan shows some really good stuff for Washington. He's sitting at some pretty good numbers. This year, he's making $5.1 million, and his arbitration year is next year, so he will become a free agent in 2026. Finnegan, a guy that I don't think will be too expensive. I don't expect him to go for major value for trade prospects, but I do expect if the Nationals do decide to sell Finnegan to be a name that they do throw out there. Obviously, making that $5.1 million isn't too expensive and definitely would solidify that 8th or 7th spot in our bullpen. Has looked some really good stuff with some really nasty sinkers and cutters. So if his name is available, I do hope that Preller does check up on him and see if maybe we can try and snag this guy. And now for some hitters, not too many of them, just 3 more. This one is Randy Arozarena. We all are familiar with Arozarena. He represented Mexico in the World Baseball Classic. Really awesome guy, really cool dude, but has had a major decline in 2024. He's batting .202 right now. He does still spot 12 home runs, but only 31 RBIs. He's currently making $8.1 million, so he is pretty cheap for the year. He does have an arbitration case next year, and he becomes an unrestricted free agent in 2027. Arozarena is a guy that we know has the stuff and the potential to be a really big spot in the lineup. Obviously, with Tatis still hurt, with some upside saying that he's starting to get healthier. He's been showing some good results with his MRIs. Arozarena would bring a lot of really good vibes and a really good change of scenery in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay always seems to offload anybody of value at any chance they get. And they're sitting at a modest record where I just don't believe they think they can probably make the playoffs with all the really good talent in the American League, especially in their AL East division. I do expect the Rays to sell, and if they do sell, I definitely think we should check in on Arozarena. I've heard a lot of ties for him with the Dodgers as well, which would just be horrible because I really love Randy. Randy, he looks really good. If his name's available and is available for trade, I think would fit in absolutely perfectly with our boys. The next really big bat we're going to talk about is Luis Robert. Luis Robert, really monster in Chicago. The definite only bright spot offensively that they have. Luis Robert is going to demand a lot because he's a fucking stud. His numbers aren't really showing it this year because he had battled with a major injury at the beginning of the year, but he's been on absolute fire. It's the last 2 or 3 weeks. He's batting a .236 batting average, but already has 11 home runs and 23 RBIs. Roberto's going to have a lot more cost to him. He's currently signed until 2027, which is kind of crazy. He'll be making $12.5 million this year, $15 million in 2025, and $20 million in 2026. He obviously does have that option and is a free agent in 2027. But Luis Robert is an absolute stud. And I believe if the price is right, not giving up too much would be an insane get to our lineup. The guy is an elite outfielder, has a really great glove, a terrific arm, hits for power, hits for contact, hits for average. The guy is a fucking stud and a menace, an absolute menace. You see how far he hit that fucking ball? Jesus Christ, anything that goes that far should have a fucking stewardess on it. But Jesus, this guy would be an absolute pull. And he's going to cost a lot. He does have a lot, like I had said, on his contract. But a guy, if he's available, which I believe he probably will be, the White Sox are going to try and trade everyone they have. An absolute great get it would be for our Padre team. And finally, the last piece we're going to look at, and a really weird name that you probably wouldn't think, Elias Diaz, the catcher for the Rockies, has had his name mentioned in possible trade opportunities and proposals for the Padres. Obviously, he's the catcher for the Rockies. He hit that big home run last year in the All-Star game that won the National League, their first All-Star game in like 10 fucking years. Diaz right now is sitting pretty with a .286 batting average, only 5 home runs, but does spot 30 RBIs. His contract is also very friendly. He's making $6 million this year and will be a free agent next year. Diaz, obviously a guy that's sitting a little bit older in age, but a really weird spot for our name to be floating around for Elias Diaz. I wouldn't be too mad about it. I mean, I do like trying to get Campusano more reps. Higashioka obviously had that really good June, but just because his name is being thrown out there in the possible trade proposals, I did want to mention him. Don't expect him to be trade prospects for too much, but obviously it's also interdivision, so I'm not sure if the Rockies will even really trade with us. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video, you guys. I did take a little bit of trying to find all these guys that I think could possibly we could land for our boys. All of these guys that I mentioned, I think, would be significant for our team and improvements, whether it's starting pitching, whether it's bullpen pitching, or big offensive bats like Luis Robert, Randy Rosarena, or maybe even Elias Diaz. I think that there's some names out here that are definitely going to be mentioned during the trade deadline and trade proposals, and I do hope our boys try and snag one of these guys. I'm iffy on if I want to really try and sell all the prospects. I'm anti prospect hugger. I'm sure most of you guys know this. But if they do decide to send big holes for the big names like the Crochets, like the Roberts, I'm not going to be too mad about it. I know Preller's got a fire under his ass. I know his seat is probably hot. I'm in favor of selling the fucking farm as long as it's not DeVries or Salas or both. If they traded both of them, it would hurt my soul. But we'll see what the Padres do. Just wanted to bring this video to you guys and try and show you guys some names that are being floated out there and possible guys that I think we might be looking at. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you do want to see me try and do a little bit everyday content, I do post the Minute Mound Visit. I do post it here on YouTube, but I mainly do it on TikTok, Instagram. Follow me there. Thank you everybody for watching. I love talking Padres baseball. I'm back to be talking Padres basketball. Back on it tomorrow. I'm so excited to get this second half of the season out of the way. I have good vibes. I'm staying vibrant. You should stay vibrant too. Go Padres, baby.